Today, we are looking at behaviourism. When we think about learning theory, it was actually behaviourism that started it all off. Interest in learning can be traced back to the ancient Greek period of history, however, the foundations of learning theory actually took root in the late 19th century. So, early exploration into learning at this time was initiated by John B. Watson, and this centred mostly on behaviour. And it was this exploration that developed into an area of study we know today as behaviourism. Now, Watson strongly believed that for the study of learning to be truly scientific, it had to be based on observable and measurable behaviour. Anything that fell outside of this was rejected, and this included unobservable mental processes. The central idea of behaviourism was that learners reacted to a particular stimulus, and their responsive practices were reinforced through neural pathways in the brain, and this was believed to be the case for animals and humans. So, from this, we can see that for behaviourists, direct instruction and practice is considered a major tool to ensure knowledge is solidified. This is Ivan Pavlov, and he was and still is a well known Russian physiologist who studied the behaviour of dogs in the early 20th century. In his study, he noticed that dogs salivated whenever they ate or even saw food. His experiment involved ringing a bell at the time food was presented to them, which over time led to the dogs salivating purely on the sound of the bell. The behaviour of the dogs had been modified, and therefore he believed that animals and therefore humans could be conditioned to respond in a particular way. This is known as classical conditioning. Can you think of ways in which we may have been conditioned in such a way? Press pause and think about this for a minute. Another form of behaviourist learning is operant conditioning. Seen as the more powerful form of the two, operant conditioning involves reinforcing a particular behaviour by rewarding it. This is known as positive reinforcement. We could also discourage a certain behaviour by enforcing some form of punishment, which is what we call negative reinforcement. Here is Edward Thorndike. He is regarded as the first pure behavioural psychologist, and he claimed that the fundamental forms of learning take place through trial and error. Thorndike believed that learning was incremental and automatic, and he conducted his experiments with cats to explore behaviour. His research involved placing a cat in a box with a hatch, which could only be released via an internal trigger. If the cat learned how to escape from the box, it would receive food as a reward before being placed back into the box. The process of escaping from the box would become easier and quicker each time, and so a particular behaviour was learned and reinforced. From this experiment, Thorndike deduced two key principles of learning: the law of exercise, which emphasized the role of repeated exposure to the stimulus as crucial to the conditioning of the response, and the law of effect, which emphasized the role of motivation in learning. Now we come to B.F. Skinner, an American psychologist who is well known for his work in behaviorism. In his study of rats and pigeons, Skinner was able to make generalizations which he related to human behavior. He also created a box that allowed the animal or bird within it to earn food by performing a particular action, like pressing a lever or a button. And the more the animal performed the action, the more it was rewarded. And so it learned that in order to receive the reward of food, it must continue to perform the action. Skinner maintained that operant conditioning could explain all human learning, as he felt that all behaviour could be controlled through reward and punishment. He did, however, emphasize that a focus on reinforcement and success rather than punishing failure was important. Can you think of ways that negative reinforcement could end in an undesirable result? Pause the video and have a think. Okay, now that we understand more about behaviourist theory, how can we relate it to our teaching practice? Although there is much less emphasis on direct lecture-style instruction in teaching these days, there is still a place for behaviourist approaches in the classroom. And we see it often. Teachers do use principles of behaviourism to show students how they should act and respond to certain stimuli. This is often repetitive, and it can be a major part of behaviour and classroom management and even motivation. A nod or a smile can go a long way to positively reinforcing desirable behaviour, for example. Perhaps you can think of some examples yourself. Of course, not everyone agrees with this approach. Behaviourism has been criticised for being less focused on human and more on animal behaviour, and for not taking into account free will and other internal influences such as thoughts. feelings, beliefs, past experiences, moods, etc. Some will say the approach is reductionist and relies heavily on the actions of the teacher or leader, and that it is largely ineffective for analytical, comprehensive, and deep learning. Many may choose to adopt other approaches or use a combination of approaches, and we'll hear about some of these in the videos to follow.